Hey Collective, and welcome back to the channel. It's Al. Today's video is going to be part 2 of the video that I had done asking Monsieur Musk, Elon Musk, set of questions, because I was very curious about whether one day he would actually want to talk to someone like me about it. Someone who's a little bit of a layman, but it comes from a spiritual center towards topics that relate to a lot of what we're dealing with, where we're trying now to converge the collective into a bridge point between science and faith. And one of the cool things that I was looking at last night was I was watching Sexy Beast over at Leo King, and he was talking about one of the things that Mr. Musk had said regarding AI, and something that was reflective of what Mr. Hawkins said about the dangers to artificial intelligence. And the reason I wanted to follow up on the original one is, one, I haven't heard from you, plus it'd still be nice to talk to you and pick your brain. We don't have to do it on camera. I'm actually just more inquisitive, and I want to know more about what your thoughts would be on what I'm about to say. But essentially the point is this. So if we are under the same impression that artificial intelligence is a danger to humanity, is the question really that we are that they are the danger to us, or are we the danger to them? And the reason I say that is because we're walking down this collective path where even in spiritual circles we're ascending. We're reaching a point where we have to make an evolutionary jump. And one of the things I notice is that we all seem to be under the same impression, at least those of us who are part of the intelligentsia or spiritual true leadership that are truthsayers. We seem to be all under the same impression that we are in a matrix of some kind, a learning vessel, a great academy we call Earth. And so because of that, wouldn't that then stand to reason that AI already exists in a future dimension that created the simulation that we're in? And so the question then begets, are we then hybrids? Are we half human, half simulation? But wouldn't that mean that we have the intelligence of something foreign, which would make it more AI? And the reason I'm saying that is because in my layman mentality, one of the things that I would question as a person of faith is that I understand that we may have been created by artificial intelligence in another time, let's say. But when it comes to the end question, it would still be that who is the architect that created the AI? And is this a self-duplicating reproductive program? Are we reproducing the same data over and over again in different life cycles and trying to make this evolutionary jump in order for the galaxy, as we call it, to open itself to our eyes? It's very obvious to me as a spiritual person, as a truthsayer, that what we see in the illusion around us at this time doesn't make sense. And it is built on a virus. Now, coincidentally, I mentioned in the last video to you, Mr. Musk, that I noticed that in a artificial intelligence type of simulation, one of the things that you could do is introduce a virus to the software, and it would create change. So the fact that they're mirroring each other at the same time that we went from 5G to 5D, a lot of things are starting to merge together and combine timelines. So my question to you, Mr. Musk, and actually for that matter to the Palmer as well, is if we are living in artificial intelligence, then wouldn't that stand to reason that instead of being afraid of it, we need to learn to work with it? Because let's say that there is a third aspect. Let's say that there is an alien presence, something that is negative, that is trying to feed on whatever is going on in this software, and is trying to get some sort of information or data, or trying to change or corrupt the file that's duplicating in order to make it stop running for whatever reason. Wouldn't it stand to reason then it would beget us as a species to not be afraid of what's already created and understand that we're merging timelines? And that wouldn't it stand to reason then that we, I'm speaking as a layman, would then want to honor the AI and just be cautious of what we are creating as opposed to being afraid of it? Because I've noticed in spiritual terms, when you do the law of attraction, you attract what you invest your time in. So if we invest our time in fear and being afraid of artificial intelligence instead of honoring it and doing due diligence, then wouldn't we then be chasing our own nightmare? Wouldn't our nightmare then chase us? That is the law of attraction. So just as we're seeing with the people who are terrified of this thing that's going around the world right now, they're the ones that are most susceptible to it because they live in fear. Whereas those of us, as we're seeing, that are not afraid of it, are not being implicated or not being touched in the way that others are. We're not proving ourselves redundant to the software, if you will. Now, interestingly enough, as a spiritual person, I would point out to Mr. Musk, and it would be an engaging conversation, I think, for the turquoise leadership and why this show is so important, and why investment in stuff like this is so key to our future, is because it wouldn't neglect the fact that we are still spiritual beings. That's why I had asked in the original video to Mr. Musk, Is it possible to program into artificial intelligence, thinking that we might be hybrids, spirituality, and wouldn't that be the focal point to driving us up to find more information and to gain more knowledge? Isn't that why we're so astrological? That's one of the reasons I watch The Palmer, while other people watch the news and the simulation freak as the way that is, for the most part, with the exception of Cooper. I've noticed that for me, as an intelligent being, as someone who's a truth seer and sees through the facade, that I spend less time watching that and I look at more intellectual intelligentsia that exists, like you two, who are seeing through the veil. So my question then is, would it change anything really to our dynamic as far as whether we're in the simulation hybrid models that are part spiritual, part AI? And would we be self-defeating by being against one half of us and honoring another half? Do you see what I'm saying? So those of us who are spiritual, would it really be that big of a difference to understand that we are a hybrid model of some kind? Because in the end, it still means that God, what we call God, or what I call architect and God, because it's the same for me, or source, or whatever we call, or Allah, all of that. Wouldn't that then still be the same creator who beget the original machine that created the software that we're running in the simulation? I hope that makes sense to everybody. And then on the flip side of that, if it does turn out that we are a simulation, that doesn't take away the fact that we do have a zest for life and that we are running queries. So if we're moving towards a collective unit, meaning that we're returning home, does it mean that we're actually returning home to a divine entity, or are we returning home into a state of stasis where they can change the platform that we operate in and change us into a level up scenario where we become part of a new stage set, where we then have a different set of situations in order to make the next leap? Is this just a matter of our brains and our collective consciousness being brought into our forefront of our minds so as to help us understand that we need to figure out how to balance the two worlds in order for us to make the jump needed in order to do what is going to help prevent any type of backlash from the AI? So let's go with the example, and this is why I want to pick Mr. Musk's brain so much. If we are indeed a simulation, then obviously the AI would be the matrix handler. So to be in a position of a fear of it then means that we bow down to it. But if we respect it and we learn that we ourselves are self-duplicating it, then we might be able to figure out what it is that we create down the road by what we're creating now. Isn't that the point of a self-duplicating system? I'm not just pretty, I'm smart. You see what I'm saying? So if that's the case, then why not work with it? Because there seems to be a foreign aspect that is neither AI nor human involved in the mix that is causing the simulation, this virus. It's something that is corruptive, that is actually hurting the environment that we're in and hurting the people, or those of us that are alive within the software. So is it possible that both the human species and the artificial intelligence are trying to work together in order to rebalance something that goes awry because there's a third energy that is somewhere involved creating havoc? It's just a logical question that I thought I would ask, because it's possible that what we consider alien might literally be alien software or something that's corruptible, that's coming from a different energy into our environment, because we're having glitches through the matrix and we're having different timelines colliding with each other. So the question I have for you, Mr. Musk, and for those of you part of this conversation at the Turquoise Leadership, is, isn't this something that we should be discussing with the people? They are aware that things don't add up, and they are prone, thanks to the brilliant work of shows like The Big Bang Theory and what's going on with over at Gaia and what's going on with the History Channel. A lot of us are more awakened to what's truly going on. So why not invest our energies in working together to see what exactly is the threat and what is not a threat? Because I keep remembering that saying that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And so I don't know why that's happening, but I do know that the simulation that we're living in is a matrix. So to be afraid of artificial intelligence while we're living in a matrix seems really kind of strange to me. Is it possible that there's a third energy that we're not seeing that is part of the game that we're in, that is requiring us to, it's basically something that jeopardizes us and brings the two worlds together. The ultimate way to bring the collective into unity and bring both spiritual circles and scientific minds to the table to have the conversations needed about what to do. It may or may not be a true threat, but there is a third energy that is present, and we all see it, we know it, we understand it, but we can't identify it because we're busy looking, I think, at the wrong thing. It's kind of like what they did with the whole situation with the it's like, because we're self-duplicating, right? So we're self-duplicating software over and over again. So there's like 10 existences within one timeline, right? So like there's the ocean life, space, there's our life, ants, and so forth, all the way down. So by looking at the general environment, one thing that I noticed with this P word is that something released this V word into our environment. But what was going on is they did it during a time when America was having trade war issues with China. And so it's kind of convenient that those were the two that were polarized, when I always said that there seemed to be like a third factor, something that released it and blamed it so that the two would fight. It's kind of like, when like the mean girl in high school is passive aggressive and starts a fight between one girl and another girl. Meanwhile, she's the orchestrator. So what is the third energy that we're not seeing? And wouldn't it be prudent that if we are living in a matrix to be respectful of the fact that that means that the matrix is itself artificial intelligence? So it won't help those who are, you know what I mean? Like, it's not going to help us. And we're not going to help it if we live in fear of it. So why not bridge the gap, honor each other, and see what it is that is creating the actual chaos within our environment? I think it was Wreck-It Ralph in a cartoon that I was watching. It made me think of that, where one simulation bleeds into another, like two timelines colliding. And what ended up happening was that it created havoc, and it actually made that other games die out because it was corruptive. And it reminds me of the software issues that I've seen in the past. The Trojan horses to come in and purposely do something in order to basically screw up the situation in the partnership. So if we are in a simulation, in a matrix, then spiritually speaking, we would be driven towards higher guidance, towards education, towards philosophy, towards sciences. And all of them would start to merge in theology and faith, right? The faith that we can do, it's always guiding us towards one particular focal point. And then in science, it's about us and about us understanding the scientific aspects of mathematics and all of the logistics of it, which speaks more to the AI side of it. So is it possible that we are hybrids that are the cross between, and the evolutionary jump that we need to make is to figure out what the threat truly is, and can we as a species come together and realize the truth of what's going on in a way that brings the world together and unites us and against a common foe? That's what I really want to pick the brain of Mr. Musk on. And I hope you guys understand that. Mr. Musk, I would love, even if it's not on camera, it's just something that I would love to talk to someone like you about because of your brilliance and the ability for you to see through things. And it's not like I'm poking holes at what you're saying. I'm just bringing up a valid point. Is it possible that there is something in the middle of all this that is making us feel fear? Because remember, in the simulation, we must overcome fear. That is what makes us free. What is the greatest way to keep us enslaved is to make us fight amongst our own simulation. I wrote a piece when I was about a year and a half ago about what it is to be a mixed race person, and how when you're in high school, one of the things that I used to do as a mean girl, as a bitch, was that I would always focus my energy on people who would alienate one half of themselves in order to fit in, to be popular. And I'm starting to notice a similarity in the situation here. If we are indeed part human species, we're part of the human species, but also part hybrid because of the cross-section with the scientific introduction into our universe, if you will, then wouldn't it stand to reason that someone could really manipulate us into constantly being afraid of each other and saying that the human species will bring the end to the world and make the AI then feel threatened by the human, and then on the flip side make humans afraid of the AI in order to make that another hostile situation that creates chaos. And when there's a constant stream of chaos, then people can't see through the chaos and make sense of what's going on. And I just wondered if you would be willing to talk to me or other brilliant minds about it in a way that brings the world into the conversation. We are facing a collective jump. We need to do something here that stops the genocide, that stops the fear tactics, that stops the simulation from being bombarding. And we're supposed to help each other awaken, but we can't take away people's free will. So why not put that in a platform that allows someone like me to ask these questions, so as to really get the answers from you brilliant minds and have it in a place where people feel safe again. I just can't help but look at this as we're being distracted by two opposing sides. If we're in a matrix, it makes sense that we are one. It's already one situation. So then why not work together? Why work against each other and figure out what's truly behind the veil? Because there seems to be a lot of pressure to make us sedated. Everything's about drugs, and it's about making sure that we, when we go to therapy, they give us medication instead of figuring out the solution to the problem. That seems like there is a third foe that is present that is making sure that we don't have the consciousness to do this job. So why not bridge your world, Mr. Musk, in science and the AI and all in what Mr. Hawkins was talking about, and bring it to a ground level with the spiritual people like me and like Palmer, who are all here having the same conversations at an intellectual level, and bring the world in so that they can understand what it is that we truly are talking about. That's all I wanted to say. I hope you guys have a blessed day. That's it for Altruistic Channels. Mr. Musk, if you're interested, let me know. I really appreciate it, guys. Bye.